Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're looking at an event that literally altered the course of American history. If you think the May 1860 Republican National Convention was just, some dry, dusty gathering of old politicians in top hats, you're in for a massive surprise. We're going to look at this historical moment not as a boring procedural event, but as a thrilling underdog story. It's essentially a calculated high-stakes political heist. Through the information we've put together, we'll see exactly how a lesser-known prairie lawyer managed to outmaneuver the absolute most powerful men in his party.
Right before the convention, Abraham Lincoln wasn't exactly shouting his presidential ambitions from the rooftops. But that quiet, fierce drive of his, it was definitely growing. In an April 1860 letter to Illinois Senator Lyman Trumbull, Lincoln confessed, "The taste is in my mouth a little." He followed it up by politely warning Trumbull, who actually had his own presidential ambitions, not to write anything that could be used against Lincoln's campaign. It's just a brilliant glimpse into the mind of a man who was carefully, almost invisibly, positioning himself for the highest office in the land.
Okay, let's dive into this. The core mystery we're solving today is really this. How does a one-term, former congressman from Illinois pull off the ultimate political upset? It wasn't by accident, and it certainly wasn't just by being the best orator in the room, although that definitely helped. It was a masterpiece of strategy, utilizing everything from hometown crowds to literal counterfeit tickets and secret backroom bargains.
Section 1. Setting the 1860 stage.
To really grasp how they pulled this off, we first have to look at the environment, right? The high stakes and the sheer electricity in the air in Chicago, Illinois, as the convention approached in mid-May of 1860. 10,000, that was the capacity of the convention center, a temporary, rapidly constructed wood frame building famously known as the Wigwam. The Wigwam was specifically designed for this event, and it had stellar acoustics. Even an ordinary speaker could be heard all the way up to the rafters, and those rafters were absolutely packed with curious citizens. The roaring energy of a 10,000-person home crowd was going to become a crucial tactical weapon.
Now, before they picked a candidate, the delegates had to agree on what they stood for. The 1860 Republican platform was incredibly effective at uniting various political factions under a brand new banner. It brought together former Whigs, Free Soilers, and moderates. They took a really firm stance against the expansion of slavery, but they also promised major economic growth. We're talking a Homestead Act, a Pacific Railroad, and protective tariffs. It was a platform perfectly designed to hold a fragile, fledgling party together while preserving the Union. But the big question was, who could successfully carry this platform to the White House?
Section 2. Frontrunners and the underdog.
And this brilliantly illustrates the dynamic of the race. On side A, we have William H. Seward of New York. He was the undeniable frontrunner, an able politician, a former governor, and a senator. It seemed almost inevitable that he'd take the nomination. But Seward had some pretty big vulnerabilities. His speeches made him look radical on slavery, which really spooked the moderate delegates, and he had alienated certain factions by opposing nativism. Now, on side B, we have Abraham Lincoln. He was the underdog, sure, but his famous February 1860 Cooper Union speech proved he was a moderate who could actually unite the party. He had those Western origins, strong oratory skills, and he strategically positioned himself not to be everyone's first choice right away, but to be everyone's second choice.
Section 3. The Chicago Advantage.
Being everyone's second choice is a fantastic start, but you still need a way to actually close the deal. And Lincoln didn't even attend the convention in person. He left it completely up to his managers, men like Norman B. Judd and David Davis. First, they engineered Chicago as the venue, guaranteeing a super-friendly environment. Second, they brilliantly branded him the rail candidate by literally parading old fence rails he supposedly split as a youth. Third, and this is just wild, they printed counterfeit convention tickets and handed them out to loyalists to literally pack the wigwam with Lincoln supporters. Finally, they ensured the entire Illinois delegation voted as an impenetrable, united bloc.
Section 4. Backroom deals and ballots.
With the arena totally packed and the hometown crowd screaming, the managers moved to the next phase, that frenzied night of May 17th into the 18th, where backroom deals and frantic ballot math took center stage. Now, while his team was desperately scrambling to win over anti-Seward delegates, Lincoln sent a very strict telegraph from Springfield to his manager, David Davis. It reads, "I authorize no bargains and will be bound by none." Lincoln explicitly forbade his team from trading political favors or cabinet positions for votes. He wanted to win this thing cleanly.
But his managers looked at that telegram and, essentially threw it right out the window.
To win the nomination, they desperately needed the Pennsylvania delegation, which was controlled by Senator Simon Cameron. Recognizing he couldn't win the nomination himself, Cameron offered his support for a price. So Davis completely ignored Lincoln's strict order and struck a deal, promising Cameron the highly coveted position of Secretary of War in exchange for Pennsylvania's crucial votes.
Section 5. The winning ticket.
Okay, so the deals were made in the dark. Now the sun comes up on May 18th, and the actual voting begins on the convention floor. To win the nomination, a candidate needed a majority of 234 votes. On the first ballot, exactly as expected, Seward takes a commanding lead with 173.5 votes. Lincoln is a distant second with 102, and Cameron holds 50.5. But here is the critical takeaway. Seward fell short of that 234 majority. He didn't deliver the knockout punch, leaving the door completely wide open for an upset.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the dramatic shift on the second ballot. Remember that backroom deal with Simon Cameron? Well, here is where it pays off. The Pennsylvania delegation, along with some others, totally abandons their initial candidates and throws their weight behind Lincoln. Seward barely moves up to 184.5, but Lincoln rockets to 181. Suddenly, the underdog is in a neck-and-neck horse race with the giant. The wigwam is absolutely vibrating with energy. Let's move to the third ballot and see how this all builds to a completely thrilling climax. On the morning of May 18th, the third ballot is tallied. Lincoln hits 231.5 votes. He is agonizingly close, just 2.5 votes shy of the 234 needed. Seeing this, an Ohio delegate named Robert K. Enos leaps into action. He grabs 3 fellow Ohio delegates to join him, and they announce a shift of 4 votes to Lincoln. That was the spark. Immediately after, an absolute avalanche of changing votes begins across the entire floor.
So the crucial point is this. Once those 4 Ohio votes pushed Lincoln over that threshold, the floodgates just opened. Delegates rushed to join the winning side. The final tally for the third ballot resulted in an overwhelming 350 votes for Abraham Lincoln, completely crushing Seward's 111.5. The moderate underdog, aided by a home court advantage, counterfeit tickets and secret deals, was officially crowned the Republican nominee.
To balance out the ticket, the convention then nominated Senator Hannibal Hamlin of Maine for vice president, easily defeating Cassius M. Clay. There's actually a fun historical tidbit here. Hamlin was completely shocked by this. He later stated he was astonished and that he neither expected nor desired it. But ready or not, Hamlin was now part of the ticket that would march toward the general election.
The heist in Chicago is officially complete. Lincoln had his party's nomination. But as we leave this explainer, I really want you to consider a massive question. The Republicans felt pretty confident going up against a deeply divided Democratic Party, but the national stakes literally couldn't have been higher. Will this moderate ticket of Lincoln and Hamlin actually be able to unite a fracturing country? Or is the irrepressible conflict over slavery about to boil over into full-blown war? The strategies used in the wigwam won Lincoln the nomination for sure, but his greatest test was only just beginning. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this truly fascinating piece of history.